Hello everyone. In the last video we covered classes in Python and we covered constructors and destructors more specifically. In this video we will be covering methods and special methods and how they relate to Python. So for here what we're going to do is that we're going to create a triangle class. It's not going to inherit from any classes. And we'll begin by creating the destructor. So here I'm going to have self, and I'm going to provide some default arguments. And I'll say self.base is equal to base, self.height is equal to height, and self.area is going to be equal to, and here I'm going to call a method that I'm going to have to build in the future because I'm referring to it now. And here's how we go about calling internal functions: self.getArea. Okay, so getArea is going to be a method that we'll be defining in a little bit. But notice how when we're calling methods that belong to itself, we have to use the self parameter as well. Next comes the destructor. I really don't want to do anything for the destructor, so what I'll do is I'll use this keyword called pass. So pass essentially means do nothing in Python. For those who are familiar with C and C++, it's the equivalent of having some code, or well, of typing a bunch of code, and then here we do a colon, right, and that's it. So equivalent. So here I have my constructor and destructor all covered. All different scenarios are covered for creating my triangle and destroying my triangle class. So now let's talk about methods. So methods are functions that belong to a class. We can have methods that can pretty much do anything. They have the same functionality as normal functions, just the only thing that there's two things that are different. And they kind of play hand in hand with each other. And it's that methods need to be within a class, and methods are always going to start with the self parameter. Okay, all methods start with the self parameter. So I'm going to create my getArea class method, self, and now we begin the body of the code. This is fairly simple. I'm just going to be calculating the area, which is 1/2 times self.base times self.height. And I'll be returning that value. Right, I'm also going to create another method called show, which will print itself. And I'll define it in 3 print statements. So I'll say base self.base, and I'll give it an end equal to a space. Then we'll print the height. We will use our self.height keyword, or attribute I should say, and we'll also print the area. And that'll be it. Right, so here show is essentially our print function. We want to print what's going on. Because we have no specified way of telling our Python interpreter on what to do if we put it inside print. So if we put it inside print, it's going to print its memory location and that's it. Right, so this is why we're having show. Now, both of these functions only have self as its parameter, meaning they're supposed to be called with no inputs. But here I'm going to define something that requires an additional input, and this is scale. So it'll always begin with self, and I'll say scalar. And I'll do self.base times equals the scalar. Right, this is equivalent to saying self.base is equal to self.base times scalar, and self.height is going to be equal to self.height is going to be equal to itself times our scalar. Right, and because we are updating our base and our height, I think it's important to update our area. So we'll have get area. What about some sort of setter function? I'll say def set params. So while all variables are public in terms of Python, a function like this could go a long way because programmers might not want to be setting parameters for a class, one parameter at a time, one attribute at a time. So a function like set parameters is nice because we can make everything a function, right? We can set all the attributes with just one function. So I'll say new base and new height. Right, so self, and it'll be quite similar to the constructor. So I'm actually going to grab that and we'll modify that here. I'm going to say new base, new height. Right, and because we are updating our base and height, we would like to update area just to make sure that everything's consistent. Right, and last but not least, we're going to have a toString function which will convert all the data that we have to a string. So we're going to return, and we're going to cast our data as a string. So our base plus, and we'll have everything comma separated with a space, string self dot height plus, we'll have that going, and finally plus string self dot area, and that's it. Right, so now we have a string conversion function. So why don't we go about implementing on testing this triangle class? So I'll say my try was equal to triangle. Okay, and well, let's print it. Let's see, we'll have my try.show, and we'll print out the contents of it, so all the data that's there. And you know what, I would like to scale my triangle parameters with providing a scalar, let's say 5. And then I'm going to create a my try string, and I'm going to say this is my try, and I'm going to convert it to string, and we'll print my try string. Lastly, what I'll do is I'll test my set params function. So I'll say my try set params, and let's give it 2 new parameters. Let's say 8 and 6. And then we'll have my try.show. So let's see what the result is. Hey, look at that. So this all seems correct to me, which is not too bad. Not too bad at all. In the next video, we'll talk about special methods and how they relate to overloading operators. Thanks.